الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له أشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Now I still believe that we have to make the effort to study the Quran, and if we do that, I believe we can reach the point where it becomes pleasant experience, something that you enjoy doing. It's no longer a duty, it's no longer something that you do just to get some rewards. It becomes really a very enjoyable experience. I mean, it takes you in a journey, intellectual, spiritual, amazing. I mean, if we know really how to deal with the Quran, and we have the proper relationship with the Quran, after every session, without exaggeration, you may emerge a different person. Something will change in you. Something will change in you in a positive way. Some area that was really not clear become clear. Some areas, that's the role of the Quran in our lives. That's not, unfortunately, the case in real life in among Muslims nowadays. Very far from there. I mean, very far from this point where people largely abandon the Quran, including those who are very religious. I mean, they probably study more books of Torah or heritage than Quran. And then, so we have a big problem to fix. We have a big problem to fix to bring things back to normal, where it's like the early days of Islam, by the way. That's what the Muslims were doing in Mecca. When part of the Quran is revealed, and then those study circles, they used to have study circles. They just take those verses and dissect them and try to get to the bottom of them and understand them and try to embody them, and then master them so that they can convey the message, because it is something that you understand the message for yourself. It is another thing to be able to convey it and articulate it in a convincing way. That needs a much deeper level of understanding. It's like teaching. I mean, there is big difference between understanding something for yourself or understand it to teach it. So I really encourage everybody to do this. It's something that I really enjoy. It become really very, very enjoyable. I mean, it's something because the more you discover, the more Quran is revealed to you, the more the gems of the Quran are uncovered, the more you realize how great this book is and how little we are leveraging it. We're continuing with Surah Al Imran. Again, just always in the background, this Quran was building an individual and a community for a big mission. Basically, Quran was telling them the plan of Allah and the purpose of Allah, and then inspire and empower them to execute that plan and to fulfill that mission. That's what the Quran, if you want to summarize in one sentence, that's what the Quran is doing. In addition, of course, or part of that, or essential part of that, is the Tawheed. So it's a book of Tawheed. But even that, strengthening your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as part of inspiring and empowering you to fulfill that mission, to understand it and to fulfill it. And I'd like always to define Islam as commitment, full commitment, or a person decide to dedicate his or her life to understand and fulfill the purpose of Allah on earth. I mean, what is it that Allah wants to happen? You understand it and you fulfill it to the best of your ability. That's what this deen is all about, essentially. And that's the essence that was lost. And then the factors or the tools that were given to us to help us fulfilling that mission. All the ibadat, all the things that are forbidden, all of this is so that you can focus and you can get that spiritual strength. The tools became the goals, and the goals and the essence was lost. And that's what we're trying to fix, and needs to be fixed. So that's what the Quran is doing. It is always trying to do that, strike that balance, which is not easy at all. Which is not easy at all, between guiding that particular community in that particular context, and then providing guidance, universal and timeless guidance for Muslims at all times and all places. That's a very delicate balance, and Quran did it, of course, in a perfect way. It was very relevant to the people in Mecca and in Medina, and it is very relevant to Muslims anywhere in the world nowadays and at any time. That balance, unfortunately, we were not aware of it. So we took the verses of the Quran wholesale. It is just one package. No, it is not. Quran, there are verses that are contextual. Contextual means they were either valid at that time for that particular circumstance or for the similar ones. They're contextuals. And there are verses that are principles. They are principles of this deen, this religion, and therefore we have to distinguish between the two. And that what was the theme of the series that we are doing here, which is to distinguish between the foundational verses and between the contextual verses. Most of our problems nowadays, or a lot of our problems nowadays, are resulting from that confusion between contextual and foundational. Which verse is foundational, which verse is contextuals. And as I said, all the verses about qital in Islam, all of them, they are contextuals. They're not, there is no principle in Islam called fighting. I mean, it's not like to be a good Muslim, you have to fight. No, it's contextual. It is something that has its context and has its rules, and there is strict rules and regulations. So many Muslim groups, or so calling themselves Muslim groups, they made two major disastrous mistakes. One, they took a contextual verse and made it foundational, and then they applied it even in the wrong way. So horrible mistake. I mean, you take a contextual verse and you make it foundational, and then even in the application you mess up in the implementation. Right, the first verses, we finished the first page. Again, Surah Al Imran, just to remind all of us, divided into two major parts. One is Aqidah, engaging the people of the book mainly, but also the mushrikeen, the people of Quraysh, the idol worshippers of Quraysh, and then having nice debate and discussion, almost debating and discussing all the shubuhat, or all the questions or things that people are, all the doubts. And the second part, which we're going to get to it later on, inshallah, sometime in the future, which is about the Battle of Uhud. Again, the Battle of Uhud is by far the most probably important incident that took place in the seerah of Rasul, just because of the number of fundamental lessons that come with it, that came with the Battle of Uhud. So the battle was just like the vehicle, but with it came a lot of important principles and fixing. You can see the Quran shaping the minds of Muslims, or reshaping it, that there are things that are wrong in their minds, and they're still wrong now. At that time, they thought that because they are Muslims, I mean, they can afford not to plan, or they can be loose in term, and when it comes to planning, etc. And Allah will make them always victorious and always winners. And this battle fixed that. No, it's not the case. That there are rules that govern this universe, And these rules are not biased toward Muslims. They are rules that whoever understands them and leverage them, they're going to thrive in this world, in this life. And whoever violates them or is ignorant of these rules, they have only themselves to blame. It's a major lesson that Muslims, until this moment, majority of Muslims, they're still يا أخي توكل على الله يعني إن شاء الله things will work out, and يعني still يعني missing that fundamental lesson that was very costly. I mean, Muslims paid heavy price for that lesson. They should have never forgotten that lesson. So first page, start with Tawheed. Again, the Quran is a book of Tawheed, oneness of Allah, and then oneness of the source of guidance. First of the first message of Tawheed in this surah came with the two names and attributes of Allah, Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum. Unity of the source of guidance is the one who revealed this book and the Torah and the Injil and everything. And the purpose is guidance to people, to humanity. And then the methodology of the Quran, which unfortunately we did not understand. Its Quran is warning those who rejected. It did not give you the right to take the law in your hand. It's basically like the Prophet is always, Quran tells them that you are just warner, and you give the good news and you warn those who reject. So the approach of the Quran is not to impose the religion on people, is for you to convey it and to tell them this is what's going to happen if you take it, and that's what's going to happen if you don't, and leave it for them. إنما عليك البلاغ. Very delicate balance that again we are missing it. That Quran has its own way to encourage people to accept its message, which is carrot and stick. This is always encourage them that if you accept this message, that's what we're going to get in this life and in the hereafter. You don't accept it, that's what's going to be the outcome. So, and it's your choice. Allah left it for people to choose. Nobody should have or should claim the right to impose a religion on people. La ikraha fi din. It's the main, one of the most fundamental verses in Quran was La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion, period. Leave people alone. Nobody asked you to judge people. Nobody put you, assigned you to be the gatekeeper of heaven or the gatekeeper of hell. That's none of your business. That's something that Allah reserved for Himself. You can come close to that. And focus on yourself, be all you can, and maximize your contribution, greater good impact on people, and that's it. And that it ends there. Yeah. Convey the message in the best possible way, by example, and the hikmah al-maw'idha al-hasana in the best possible way, and then leave it for people. So there is warning. إن الذين كفروا لهم عذاب شديد والله عزيز ذو انتقام. Allah is talking to His people. I mean, why you're putting yourself in the middle? To just convey. مع الرسول إلى البلاغ. You're just conveying this warning from Allah to His people, to His servant, His creation. And then, of course, another reinforcement of Tawheed and Allah the knowledge, absolute knowledge, and then the Creator. كيف يشاء, and this there is an implicit message that He created Isa, because that's going to come, Jesus. صوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء. The whole idea of Tawheed is that there is nothing in between the Creator and the creation. There is no gray area, there is no overlap, there is no confusion. There is one creator who created everything else. Everything else is creator. Can be angels are creators, Jesus are creation, Jesus is creation, Adam is creation, even though they were created in a very special way. Eve is creation, prophets are creation, everything is a creation. And then the verses that are clear-cut verses and the ones that can be accept more than one interpretation. أما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ, and I include, that's my opinion, I include the deviated Muslim groups among those الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه, that they keep following these verses that are not clear-cut, contextual verses, and then they're creating so much damage in the Muslim world and in the whole world actually, and to Islam. And I include those in that category. يعني قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة. They leave the essence of this deen and the essence of their mission, and then they keep following these things and they end up committing horrible acts in the name of Islam. ما يعلم تأويله إلا الله, that's perfect, that's beautiful. That no matter how much knowledge you have, no, you always say that's my opinion, that's the best, that's what I think. I mean, even if you are the greatest scholar on earth, your opinion will never become a deen, should never become religion. وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله. It is just your opinion, your interpretation. We it may carry probably more weight because you are more knowledgeable, but it's never the truth. It's never the absolute truth. And then the dua, that's what the believer will be worried about all the time. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا. It's the same like اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين. So keep us on the straight path, because that's the greatest thing in the hands of the believers, the most precious things, and they are not willing to compromise it for anything. So if you have one opportunity to make a dua, that's the first dua. That's why that's the supplication in Surah Al-Fatiha. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. طيب. Second page. إن الذين كفروا لن تغني عنهم أموالهم ولا أولادهم من الله شيئا وأولئك هم وقود النار. Again, that's the language and the style of the Quran. It's warning those who are rejecting. And those, by the way, kafaru, we have to be clear about this kafaru thing here. Kafaru, first of all, it applies to someone who was really exposed to the true Islam and they rejected it. So that's one thing. And that's, by the way, I don't think there are many people who fall in this category in the world nowadays. Most people either got no idea about Islam or got Islam in a twisted way, received Islam in a twisted way. So someone who was exposed to the true Islam, especially by example, and someone articulated the true Islam to them, and they rejected it. That's one thing. I can see that because of that balance in Quran, because الذين كفروا at that time, they were also enemies, like the enemies of the state. So they were not kafaru and they are minding their own business. No, whether the people in Medina or the people in Mecca, either Quraysh or the tribes in Medina, they were not kafaru, meaning that they rejected and they kept worshipping and they did not interfere. No, actually there is some almost equivalence at that time, that those who rejected the message of Muhammad sallallahu of Islam, they were also the enemies of the state, and they were also people who were plotting against the state. But in all cases, this is Quran talking to people. Your job is to convey it. Your job is to tell people that if you reject this message after you are exposed to it, etc., that's what Allah is saying. It's between you and Allah. But you don't put yourself in the middle and become a judge, and then you not only judge, actually, the judge and law enforcement. The judge, you put yourself as a judge, and you start deciding who's the Muslim and who's the kafir and who's gonna go to heaven and who's gonna go to hell, and then you take the law in your hands, and then you go and execute. That's has nothing to do with Islam. So إن الذين كفروا, this is verse 10. neither their possessions nor their children will be any use to the disbelievers against God. So, and again, this idea of disbelievers have to be very careful. We should not be busy with it at all, and we should not keep expanding it. Like many people say today, for example, people of the book, they are kuffar, yani disbeliever type. Why? Well, Quran called them people of the book. Then why you're expanding again? So neither their possessions nor their children will be any use to the disbelievers against God. The disbeliever will be fuel for the fire. That's the nature, the language of the Quran is to warn people directly and to give you, assign you only the responsibility to convey this message, but don't take anything in your hands. Just tell them what Allah is telling them. إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Mu'minun says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ لِلنَّاسِ. The book was revealed to people. Your job is to convey it in the best possible way. And then, كَدَأْبِ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ كذبوا بآياتنا فأخذهم الله بذنوبهم والله شديد العقاب. طيب, there was a warning and now there is an example. And you're not going to be more powerful or more than the people, the Pharaoh and his people. كدأب آل فرعون والذين من قبلهم, just as Pharaoh's people and their predecessors denied our revelations and God punished them for their sins. This is telling us something else now, is that punishment can happen in this life. And again, that's our job, is not to feel good, is not to be happy that Allah is punishing people. It's the other way around. They should be very compassionate toward people and convey the message in a very compassionate way. And if you don't have compassion, you'd better don't get involved in da'wah or in conveying the message. Because da'wah, the real, true da'wah should come out of compassion. So you should be compassionate, but telling people this is what it is. Your God, your creator is telling you that if you do reject, there is punishment. And this punishment in the hereafter, very severe, by the way, fuel of fire. Yeah. That's very, waqud al-nar. This was mentioned a couple times in Quran, very, very strong. Yeah. The fuel for the fire. And now there is an example to bring the idea even closer. And then we added another element, which is that it can happen in this life. So, like, just as Pharaoh's people and their predecessors denied our revelation, and God punished them for their sins. It's in a reinforcing and telling them that it's real. This punishment from God, it's real. We hope it doesn't happen to you. We still are invited, but it is real. It can happen even in this life. Wallahu shadidul aqab. So very strong language. كدأب آل فرعون والذين من قبلهم كذبوا بآياتنا أخذهم الله بذنوبهم. Denied our revelations, God punished them. Punished them for their sins. God is severe in punishing. Allahu shadidul iqab. يعني it's reinforced with shadidul iqab. God is not only punishes, but severe in punishing them. Wallahu shadidul iqab. Again, all of this, it's not something that we enjoy. It's not like something because we have seen people who claim to be Muslim and they enjoy talking about how people are going to end up in hellfire, as if their job is to send more and more people to hellfire. It's the other way around. But we just tell people that's what your creator is telling you, and it's your call and it's your decision. قل الذين كفروا ستغلبون وتحشرون إلى جهنم وبئس المهاد. Again, it's still the same very strong language that Prophet say to the disbelievers, you will be defeated and driven together into hell, a foul resting place. Jahannama wa bi'sal mihad. All of this, all three verses are verses of warning and threatening. Allah is threatening people as a way to try to invite them to the straight path, not the other way around. It's basically targheeb and tarheeb. It's basically encourage people to follow the straight path and discourage them from following the wrong path or losing their way. قل الذين كفروا ستغلبون وتحشرون إلى جهنم وبئس المهاد. طيب remember these surah was revealed after the Battle of Badr, and after, part of it, and after the Battle of Uhud. After the Battle of Badr, first of all, hypocrisy went up, and some people say it started after the Battle of Badr. Of course, when Muslims are weak, there is no need for hypocrisy, but hypocrisy thrived after the victory of in the Battle of Badr. But some people said, especially tribes in the Medina, some people said to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Muslims, don't be, don't think that because you just defeated those illiterate mushrikeen, that you think that no, we are people of the religion and people of the book, etc. So Quran, after giving them the distant example of Pharaoh, is giving them the example of Badr now. قد كان لكم آية في فئتين التقتا. That's in Badr. فئة تقاتل في سبيل الله وأخرى كافرة يرونهم مثليهم رأي العين والله يؤيد بنصر من يشاء إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. طيب. Pharaoh may be very distant example. Now Badr. Badr is very, very recent. You have already seen a sign, those warning and the example of Pharaoh, and the punishment can be in this life. And now you have seen a more recent example, very fresh. You have already seen a sign in the two armies that met in battle, one fighting for Allah's cause and the other made up of disbelievers. ما هو قل الذين كفروا ستغلبون. It gave the conclusion that you're going to be defeated, and now to confirm that or reinforce that or to prove that, there is an example of these two armies that met in battle, one fighting for Allah's cause and the other made up of disbelievers, with their own eyes, the former, disbelievers with their own eyes, the former, so the latter to be twice their number. Here there is two explanations of the fact that يرونهم مثليهم رأي العين. Either because the army of Quraysh at that time was double or more than double the army of the Prophet ﷺ. Or there is another explanation that says that the mushrikeen, the army of Quraysh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them see the army of believers twice as large as their army. Either explanation is okay. So whether it is the fact that Muslims actually saw the army of Quraysh to be twice or three times as large as them, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of his support to Muslims, made the people, the army of Quraysh, see Muslims twice or three times as large as them. It doesn't matter either way. What matters is what coming next. Wallahu, in either case, whether we're referring to the fact that the army of Quraysh was double or triple, or Allah made them see the Muslims double or triple, what matters is the principle that is coming next. Wallahu yu'ayyidu bi nasrihi man yasha. Wallahu yu'ayyidu bi nasrihi man yasha. Wallahu yu'ayyidu bi nasrihi man yasha. First of all, that victory comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no other source. Um, and this is the lesson that Muslims missed later on in Hunayn. ويوم حنين إذ أعجبتكم كثرتكم فلم تغن عنكم شيئا وضاقت عليكم الأرض بما رحبت. And this lesson that yes, you have to plan. Yes, you have to be very strong. Yes, you have to take care of every little details. But at the end of the day, after you exhaust all the means and you do everything you can do and you do it right, I mean, you do it right, then you have to realize that وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. That's in another verse here. وَاللَّهُ يُؤَيِّدُ بِنَصْرِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. وَاللَّهُ يُؤَيِّدُ بِنَصْرِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. But God helps whoever He will. That's a very strong language, by the way. That's a very strong reinforcement of Tawheed. Anytime you see من يشاء أو على كل شيء, these transcendent attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are strong reinforcement of Tawheed. والله يؤيد بنصره من يشاء. But God helps whoever He will. And you know that God is not to be asked. لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. That's the whole purpose of the Quran, is as a book of guidance. There truly is a lesson in this for all with eyes to see. إن في ذلك لعبرة لأولي الأبصار. Whoever can see, they should be able to see this. So, warning from rejecting. Example, Pharaoh and his people. Punishment can happen even in this life. Then reinforcing that if those are going to be defeated, because Allah is going to be on the side of believer, of course, if they deserve it, if they qualify, if they do everything they can. Allah takes care only of things that are beyond our limits. Anything below that, it's our business. So you kick off the help of Allah when you exhaust all the means. And remember the two examples that I always use. The example of Musa alayhi salam, when Allah asked him to throw his stick, that's the only thing he can do. I mean, Allah could have done it without Musa. But just to tell us that if there is still one thing you can do, just do it. And then, وَهُزِّي إِلَيْكِ بِجَذْعِ النَّخْلَةِ, a woman who's delivering, in that situation, Allah could have got her the dates without doing any effort. But it is lesson for us that as long there is something you can do, just do it, and Allah will take care of the rest. Maybe shaking the palm tree is not enough to get the dates out, but that's what Allah can do. But as long there is something that you can do, and again, Quran teaches us with extreme cases, so that it doesn't have to tell you many examples. Just one extreme case. Islam in general, even the Hadith, one extreme example, so that you don't need. I mean, when Hadith says that if you see the sign of the Day of Judgment and you have a seedling, if you manage to plant it before, just do it. What else do you need to understand that you should not procrastinate? That's it. I mean, one very extreme example. You should not keep saying what's the point. Maybe no. If you can, and then the Hadith of the ship. It's a very extreme case of people out of good intention. They say we are bothering people upstairs, so let's dig a hole in the ship to get our water. They say if the people upstairs, they keep them in the upper deck, they allow them to do that, everybody will sink. It's an amazing hadith of the importance of civic engagement, and that you should never be passive in a society and say, I'm going to protect my family and protect myself, because then you will be like the people who are in the upper deck and say, we can be safe there. طيب, زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء. Here we're going to start a journey. It's an amazing journey, by the way. Journey of the Quran, taking people step by step from reality. It tells you how realistic this book is. Acknowledge desires and the human nature and weakness, and then try to take it up, try to bring you up, to overcome those forces of gravity, quote unquote, that are pulling you down. So it starts with زين للناس حب الشهوات من النساء والبنين والقناطير المقنطرة من الذهب والفضة والخيل المسومة والأنعام والحرث. And you can see here almost everything that people desire throughout the ages. And you find things that probably may not be relevant now, they were relevant at that time, but there are things that are timeless. The love of desirable things is alluring for man. Women, children, gold and silver, treasures piled up high, horses with fine markings, livestock, and farmland. The list, I think, is very comprehensive. And the Quran is saying these are things that are really, that people desire them. I mean, there is no attention of the Quran to suppress these things or to make you superhuman. No, you're going to still be human. These things, Quran acknowledge them and then moderate them and regulate them, channel them in the proper way. There is nothing wrong with loving these things and trying to accumulate as much money as possible, as long as you do it the right way, in a lawful way, for the right purpose, and you don't become a money worshiper. So, and then after saying all of this, like ذَلِكَ مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, and then you are invited for something higher. Something higher doesn't mean that you abandon these, because we know that Quran never suppresses any natural desires. Islam never suppresses a natural desire. It only regulates it, moderates it, etc. ذلك متاع الحياة الدنيا والله عنده حسن المآب. These may be the joys of this life. So nothing bad about them. It's not wrong. Quran is not asking you, or Islam is ask you to desert these things and live a life that is not natural. No, these are the joys. So started with zuyina, made alluring for man, and then these are the joys of life. But Allah has the best place to return to. Now Allah is telling you, is going to give you the higher purposes for which you should use these things, not to abandon them. The higher purposes. So these should not become goals. That's what the Quran is telling us. These should never become the end goals. They are alluring. They are the joys of life. Nothing wrong with enjoying these things and liking them or desiring them, but there is a higher purpose. طيب. قل أو أنبئكم بخير من ذلكم. Should I tell you about something even better? Better than all of this? Yes, better than all of this. طيب. طبعا, a believer reciting this, you become very excited and eager to know what is better than all of this. يعني قل أو نبئكم بخير من ذلكم للذين اتقوا عند ربهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وأزواج مطهرة ورضوان من الله والله بصير بالعباد. طيب, should I tell you about something better than this? Would you like me to tell you of things that are better than all of these? Their Lord will give those who are mindful of Allah gardens graced with the flowing streams, where they will stay with pure spouses and God's good pleasure. Because Ridwan min Allah, this is the ultimate prize. This is the big prize for which a believer, even all of this, even heaven and etc. وَرِضْوَانُ مِنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. The biggest prize for a believer is that good pleasure of Allah. Comes even on top of every every materialistic thing. God's good pleasure. God is fully aware of his servant. Fully aware of his servant will tell us about the previous verse. That I know that Allah knows that that his servant like these things. And they were made alluring, and they are the joys of life, and there is nothing wrong with it. There is no even a hint that these things are bad, because there are some Muslim groups who produce the desert, the Bedouin or desert or version of Islam, yani, which I mean, start looking at these things are they're bad, yani, that's not true. Or of course you have the abuse also, and we have all the mess, yani, from all extremes. So Allah knows that you like these things, and these are the joys of life. Now, every time someone who knows how to really recite the Quran and read it or study it, when you go to something when you come across a group of people whom Allah is praising, or Allah is promising them heaven and his good pleasure, immediately what comes to your mind is what these people were doing. That's one way that one thing that you should keep in mind as you're reciting the Quran. It is, oh, these are Jannat and Ridwan, and what they did. What is it that they have done in life to qualify for all of this? And then the answer comes immediately. الذين يقولون ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. الصابرين والصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين والمستغفرين بالأسحار. Two beautiful verses tells you what are these people whom Allah is saying that is promising them things that are much better than all of these things that people like in this life. And you can see in the verse, part of it is spiritual and part of it is practical and character. So الذين يقولون ربنا, those who say, our Lord, we believe, so forgive us our sins and protect us from suffering in the fire. So these people, they never take anything for granted. They never think that they are the chosen people. They never think, like many Muslims do, they never think that they never become complacent with everything that they are doing, which is going to come in the next verse. They are still asking for forgiveness. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. This is an acknowledgement that you will never live up or meet the divine expectations. You can only come close to it. So while they're doing everything they're doing, as we're going to see in the next verse, they're still praying for forgiveness. ربنا إننا آمنا. They're pleading to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them. إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. And you will be amazed to see the characteristics of these people and what they are doing. And then you compare that with Muslims nowadays, who many of them are doing none of this, and then they are not even worried. Yani they are really, they're very relaxed. So, صابرين والصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين 4 والمستغفرين بالأسحار 5. 5 characteristics of these people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is promising this heaven and telling you that he has something much better than all of these things. It doesn't mean that you should neglect them or abandon them or hate them. No, but you should, while you're enjoying them, while you like them, while you are working for them, you still have that higher purpose, which is, and as you can see, the 5 characteristics are forces that run against the gravity. Forces that are pulling you up, starting with the sabirin. Oh, let's read the translation again. So those who, those who say, our Lord, we believe, so forgive us our sins and protect us from suffering in the fire. Those who are steadfast, patient. Those who are steadfast, truthful, صدق, صادقين, truly devout to Allah, قانتين, devout. And then who give in Allah's cause, منفقين, and pray before dawn for forgiveness. Again, steadfast, sabr, صادقين, truthful, قانتين, truly devout, منفقين, for مستغفرين بالأسحار. Those who are wake up before Fajr, which is the most difficult probably time to wake up. Fajr is not easy to wake up, but even waking up even before Fajr, and then when everything is so quiet and maybe by yourself, and you're just having that private time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's so الصابرين الصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين والمستغفرين بالأسحار. طيب, let's start with the sabr. Now, sabr, basically, if you are faced with a calamity or faced with anything, with difficulties, usually it pushes you or drives you to be weak and to give up and to fall in despair. And then comes patience to take you up, to uplift you, to go above pain and above anything that you may face in life. And that's one of the strongest tools in the hands of the believers, is sabr, to deal with the challenges of life. So sabirin, also sabirin, patience, indicates how much you are submitting yourself to Allah. Basically, you're accepting everything. Of course, accepting always after you do everything you can, and then something beyond your control and beyond your limits, then you have only patience to deal with it. There is nothing else. We're not talking about something or an issue or a situation where you still do something. You still can do something about it. No, we're talking about you exhausted all means. It's a death in the family. It is disease. It's something that is nothing you can do about it. Then you have only patience to deal with it. Patience is a very powerful tool. If you want to summarize the tools in the hands of the believer to deal with everything in life, it's the ones that were summarized in one hadith. It is gratitude and patience. Yani sabr shukr. Anything good happens in your life, you meet it with thankfulness and gratitude to Allah, and you should never become arrogant or should not distract you. يا الذين آمنوا لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله. I mean, should not distract you from your mission and from your duties, etc. And anything bad or difficulties, you meet it with patience, perseverance, and then of course you go inside to see what is it that you did wrong, what is it that you failed to do, what lessons you learn from this, to fix mistakes so that you don't repeat them again, and then you move on. That's the proper attitude of a believer in this life. Sabr against difficulties and calamities, and of course sabr in a positive way, not just the passive. It is patience while with evaluation, with self-evaluation. Go back, because we know that everything bad that happens to us in this life is from ourselves, and we have only ourselves to blame. That's what the Quran says. وَمَا أَصَابَكَ مِنْ سَيِّئَةٍ فَمِنْ نَفْسِكَ قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. You're even getting a discount. Yani. You're not even getting everything that you, you're not punished, being penalized with equally to what you have done. It's you're getting a discount. وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. That Allah forgives a lot. So sabr, it's a very strong tool that takes a person above pain, above despair, above the confusion, above everything, and then make you very steadfast. Sadq. That's something that if you really want to say, I mean, if you want to point to one thing that is causing the situation you see in the Muslim world, is like lack of truthfulness. I mean, if people, believe me, tomorrow, if majority of the population in the Muslim world become truthful, many problems will be resolved. Yeah. Many problems. Lying is so widespread. Of course, lying, remember, lying doesn't mean that you fabricate a story or you make up story. Exaggeration is lying, half-truth is lying, concealing an information is, lying can take many forms. Yeah. But believe me, from what I have seen in most Muslim societies, if really tomorrow majority, not even everybody, vast majority become honest and truthful, wallahi, so many problems will be resolved. Yeah. So many problems everywhere. Yeah. Lying is a weakness. Truthfulness is power, strength. So when Sadiqeen, these are people who are overcoming the force of lying that is pulling them down. It's like with sabr, sidq is the same thing. So sabr and sidq. By the way, it was mentioned also in Surah Al-Ahzab. Yani, same thing, very similar thing. Description of the believers in Surah Al-Ahzab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات. صدقا صبر, same. والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات, منفقين here they called منفقين, over there متصدقين. والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. This verse of Surah Al-Ahzab, I strongly recommend that it's Surah 33. Surah 33, verse 35. It's an amazing checklist. It's an amazing recipe or checklist or of characteristics of believers with whom Allah will be pleased. أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات الصادقين والصادقات الصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين. 10 characteristics, and it is mentioned in man and woman both. So it's again Surah chapter 33 verse 35. Even though we're gonna get us a while to get there, but take us a while, but please make sure to study that verse and check yourself against it. So قانتين صابرين صادقين والقانتين. And qunut is the highest level of devotion. Yeah. Qunut is it's really, it's like in any emotional thing, there is ceiling, there is upper limit, higher limit. Qunut is you worship and obey Allah until you reach the qunut. So that's why the translation, it's a good one. It says truly devout. Qanitina, when you devote yourself exclusively to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're gonna overcome a lot of forces that are pulling you in all directions. Well, munfiqina, of course, that's freedom. That's freedom of greed and freedom of money worshipping. When you spend, it's your money, you worked hard with it, you earned it, yet because you believe that it belongs to Allah and you believe that it was meant to be spent, everything that is more than your needs, يعني يسألونك ماذا ينفقون قل العفو. يعني satisfy your needs, the rest is for spending. So that's the, spending is not something that is marginal in Islam. It's an integral part of building that community, integral part of the solidarity, integral part of the belief that money belongs to Allah, and therefore I'm going to use it in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the most thing that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most is when you're helping people with that money that Allah has given you. Yes, you worked for it, but there are other people who worked, they did not get as much as you got. You always have to remember that it's a rizq. And then to confirm that you believe that it belongs to Allah, you spend it that way. But because everybody can say money belongs to Allah and then you're keeping it for yourself. No, there is contradiction here. And then mustaghfirina bil ashar, it's a nice touch. Yani these people, we start by people praying for forgiveness. الذين يقولون ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. Yani they're worried and they want Allah to forgive them and to protect them from hellfire. And then he's telling us all these great characteristics of these people, and then concluded by وَالْمُسْتَغْفِرِينَ بِالْأَسْحَارِ. These people, they don't just seek for forgiveness when it is convenient. No, they wake up. They wake up at the time before Fajr, and when things are so quiet, to have those private moments, munajat, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking for forgiveness. So that touch of al-ashar is a nice touch here. Beautiful that not only because we start with istighfar, but now it's not any istighfar, it is people who wake up for that, is to pray to Allah for forgiveness. I will stop here inshallah and give some time for comment, discussion, thoughts, because we're starting another round, which is going to start with the verse of Tawheed again. After the first round, we start with Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Now, shahid Allahu annahu la ilaha illa huwa wal malaikatu wal ilmi qa'iman bil qist. La ilaha illa huwa, again, al-aziz al-hakim. It's an amazing reinforcement of Tawheed in different ways, and then attached with different names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One time is al-hayy al-qayyum, the other is qa'iman bil qist, and the other is al-aziz al-hakim, etc. All right, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dr. Suhail, I have a quick question.
Sure.
When I'm reading Quran and I'm trying to find the meaning or inspiration from the ayat, how do I know, for example, that this ayah is contextual and this ayah is not? On my own, I can't do that. I have to. What's your recommendation? Because sometimes I would read something and I would find myself drawn to a meaning, and then I go read some tafsir and I discover that I'm completely away from the main idea that this ayah was revealed because such and such incident happened. What's your comment on that?
It's not easy. I mean, that's a very good question. There is no clear-cut or easy way. You just do what you did, which is we have to take Quran as if it's a course that we're taking. So if we're not sure, we go and look up things like any good student will do. They go and look up the problems and consult extra resources and consult go to the TA or the professor. I mean, that's the nature of it. I mean, we don't have to figure it out ourselves. Consulting different tafsir, it's a good. So what you did is the right thing to do. And having these discussion here like this, or in the family, or etc., that's the natural way, the best way to sort out what is really foundational and what is contextual. Again, the Quran had that very delicate balance to strike, is to be very relevant to Arabs at that time, in that very messy society, with all the problems that we know, and then to be relevant for people at all times and all places. But it did it very well. It's up to us to figure out and to sort out what is contextuals, what is anything that does not have a principle in Islam is contextual. So, for example, the verses that all fighting is contextual. There is no question about it. The verses that deal with the Ladina Kafaru, that's also most of it contextual, because الذين كفروا at that time means those enemies, those people who want to wipe out the Medina, who are conspiring from within. And it says it was not الذين كفروا who were worshiping God the way they want in their own. No, it wasn't. This is also one thing that should be taken with a grain of salt. As I said, wherever there is a relationship between Muslims and the الذين كفروا, most of the time it meant those الذين, like for example the verse in Surah Tawbah, verses that definitely are contextuals, definitely. No way Quran who tells us that there is no compulsion in religion will tell you to go after those who rejected Yan. There is no, that's contradiction. Yan. So again, it's not easy, but studying Quran and having a platform like this one where people can bring questions, not necessarily I have the answer, but we can put our heads together and sort out. It's the right way to do it. The time, every time we put in the Quran is worthwhile. So even if you spend the whole week struggling with one verse, it's worth it. It's not about how fast or how much we're covering in, until you get to the bottom of it. From tafsir that you consult, you go online, you discuss with people, until you grasp the meaning of that verse, and you realize whether it is foundational verse or contextual. It's worth it. Yeah. So we should not be frustrated just because we are not moving fast, or we are not, or we are going slow with the Quran. As long as you're doing this continuously and steadily, studying every time, and then you study for guidance and inspiration and for immediate implementation. That's the proper attitude of a believer. There is no lag period between you got it and then it becomes, it finds its way to your daily behavior. Maybe in the next hour or the next day, it becomes a habit of yours, because as I said, from every session of the Quran, you should come out with a homework. There are things that I'm going to work on to implement because I'm missing. And there are things that I must get rid of because they are there and they shouldn't.
جزاك الله خير.
السلام عليكم. جزاك الله خير.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Sorry, I couldn't came last week. I couldn't enter in.
Ismail, your voice is very low.
Is it low? What about now? It's fine?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you for this powerful part of the Quran, which is talking about the Aqidah and talking about the Iman, and that means about the fundamental like ayat and verses, muhkamat والمتشابهات.
I can't hear you at all.
Oh, sorry. Now it's fine, I think. No?
No, Ismail, it's still low.
I thought now it's fine.
Still the same.
We can't hear, brother.
Now it's working? Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, now.
No. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. قلت إنه for these verses is really important verse, which is fundamental things about muhkamat and mutashabihat. So my question about the القنوت أو القانتين. You just mentioned that الصابرين والصادقين والقانتين والمنفقين والمستغفرين بالأسحار. So القانتين, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned that Maryam alayha salam, when he mentioned وأمه صديقة كان يأكلان الطعام، وبعد ذلك في نهاية سورة التحريم يقول وكانت من القانتين. So what's the like what's the relationship between القنوت and الصديقة? and it's like one of the highest level of the faith of the or belief in الإيمان بالله سبحانه وتعالى والتضرع إليه. يعني ما هو القنوت؟ أو هو القنوت مثلا حتى بالوقفة، الذين يقولون مثلا القنوت في الصلاة مثلا بالوقف والدعاء، يعني هل هو مظهر من مظاهر القنوت أو قنوت شيء ثاني؟
All right, Sheikh Ismail is asking about the qunut, which is one of the characteristics that was mentioned in the verse 17, and then was mentioned as in relation to Maryam alayhi salam. What's the relationship with Siddiqa? And for me is, you know, الإيمان ما وقر في القلب وصدقه العمل. So Iman is what resides in your hearts. It's a beliefs and it's emotions, etc. But would be confirmed by action. Now, the higher the faith is, or the stronger will be the reflection, because the action, it's like a mirror reflection of your beliefs. So when it reaches the highest level or very high level, your belief, it's like you reach the level of certainty, yaqeen, that it's no longer you're accepting the existence of Allah or the hereafter. You are certain. ثم لم يرتابوا in Surah Al-Hujurat. ثم لم يرتابوا, and they have no shred of a doubt. If you reach that, then your worship also will increase or improve to reach the highest level, which is qunut. So Siddiqa is like Abu Bakr Siddiq. Now, Abu Bakr Siddiq was called Siddiq when? After the Isra al-Mi'raj. Because when people of the Quraysh came and say, now we found something that you will never believe your friend, because he's claiming that yesterday he went to Jerusalem, last night went to Jerusalem and went to the seventh heaven and then came back. It's on, I mean, even nowadays it's impossible, yani, probably, even with today's means of transportation, especially the second part, of course. But anyway, so they came, they were almost certain that Abu Bakr Siddiq is going to say, no, that's too much. Yeah. No, I mean, this is way. So Abu Bakr Siddiq responded in a very nice way. He said, if he said it, it is true. And I'm not sure about you, and I'm not sure about you conveying this. But if he said it, then it is the truth. That's the level. I mean, so that's why I call Siddiq. If your Iman reach the level of Siddiq, your worship will reach the level of Qunut. Yes.
So the reason why I put this question here on this meaning, because one of the du'at, he said maybe Maryam alayhi salam is counted as a prophet. Yeah.
Yeah.
لذلك سألت يعني بين الصديقين والقانتين. I think the qanitin, I think the proper word is purity. It's kind of purity. It's like their faith and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really pure.
It's more, it's complete devotion, يعني هو إخلاص, or it's close to the meaning of ihsan also. أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه. يعني it's the you start with the worship by doing the minimum and doing the mechanical يعني aspect of worship, and you keep improving it and going up with that quality of worship until it reaches the level of qunut. Any other questions or comments? Brother Muhammad, if you have something to add.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.
Alaikum
Namshi.
assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I have a question about the last part of Ayah 14, or 13. Wallahu yu'ayyidu binasrihi man yasha. Now, does that mean that, I mean, if I want to also refer to another ayah, yurziqullahu man yasha. So where does our part begin and end? with these principles, and when does Allah's part begin? Like, for example, rizq, nasr, those that prepare for battle. When does our part begin and end, and when does Allah's part begin? And
It's basically
if you're not ready for battle, does Allah still grant you the victory?
No. That's what we're gonna see extensively. The lessons from the Battle of Uhud was confirmed, with and left no doubt that there is no such thing that because you are a Muslim you can be lousy and you expect results. So it's basically, the way I see it is that you do everything you can and you do it right, and you do your due diligent effort or work until you reach your limits. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, which majority of Muslims they abuse it, they use it in the wrong way. Wus'a means its utmost. Allah is asking you to do your utmost. And then وأخرى لم تقدروا عليه. Your utmost fell short. Allah will take care of the rest. And you have to have that confidence, of course, that there is also the tawakkul. There is also the tawakkul, which is the certainty that because or you put your trust completely in the hands of Allah, because I am following the formula, I did everything I can. And that's what Rasul ﷺ said, and Musa said in the ultimate, in the moment of truth. Musa alayhi salam, when his people say we're done, and كلا إن معي ربي سيهدين. We did everything we can. But now we have the sea in front of us, and it's something that there is nothing we can do about it. So Musa alayhi salam did not lose hope after doing everything, including throwing his stick. When Allah asked him later to throw a stick, but that certainty and trust has to be there. It's a delicate equation, which is basically when you're planning, you plan as if there is no help from Allah, as if you are relying on your plans, as if you are relying completely on your plans. When you are done planning, you switch, as if you had no plans, you're relying completely on Allah. That's what the Rasul ﷺ, it's even more, it's a better example. Actually, both of them are good. Rasul ﷺ in the cave, fleeing Mecca in his migration, he did everything right. Rasul ﷺ planned the migration in details that Muslims nowadays, even in our community here in the United States, they don't plan that carefully. Never mind Muslim in the Muslim world. He planned the migration, he did to the least details. Everything. He planned for everything. And then they hired the expert, the greatest expert in the desert and the routes of the desert as a guide, and they went in the wrong direction to mislead the Quraysh, and they spent 3 days in the cave so that until things settle, and then he planned everything. With all this planning, the people of Quraysh were able to come to the cave, and they were surrounding it. And Abu Bakr Siddiq was with him, his companion, said, if they look down, they're going to see us. The same thing like the people, the companions of Musa. Here Rasul sallallahu ما بالك باثنين الله ثالثهما. There is no, Allah is with us. إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا. That's after. Now there is no planning. Plans is gone. Now it's full trust in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's when you are planning, you do it as if you are relying completely on your plans. You don't leave anything for details or for a chance. And then when you are done planning and executing and doing everything you can, and then you fell short, actually, even before that, you're still asking for help from Allah and then relying completely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Wallahu yu'ayyidu bi nasrihi man yasha. Of course, man yasha, it doesn't mean that some people can be taking all precautions and other are lousy and Allah will choose whom to. No, that's not, of course. Allah doesn't do things like this. I mean, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. All his attributes are perfect. So it has to be understood with other verses that, yes, first of all, you have to take all precautions, but at the end, it's still Allah will give victory to whoever he wills. I mean, there is no restriction to his power. There are rules. So the people in Hunayn, Muslims were larger in numbers. So on paper, they should be victorious, yeah. And that's what they thought. When they relied on their numbers, one of them said, today we will not be defeated because we are short in number. Probably that's the first time they were not short in number, then. And then the first phase of the battle, they lost it. And it's a delicate balance. When you're planning, I don't say forget about, but be like anybody else, like atheists, who just relying on their plans. And then when you are executing, and then you put your trust, if you did everything you can, you put all your trust in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sheikh, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Can I add something like really maybe relative to relevant to this concept of النصر والله يؤيد بنصره من يشاء. In Surah Al-Baqarah, أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا. So they are strangled to the end, like they are in the end, which is like the edge of the fail or something like that. وبعدين حتى يقول الرسول ولا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله, and then right after ألا إن نصر الله قريب. So right after this, maybe. So but as you said, so in Surah Al-Imran, even the Muslim or the example of Hunayn, even the Muslim, they are righteous, or they are in the right way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the Nasr and the number that يعني الأسباب المادية, which is material things, and the faithful things, they are in the right side. But even though they lose some part of this battle. لذلك والله يؤيد بنصره من يشاء. هنا تكمن المشيئة الخالصة لله سبحانه وتعالى, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave the victory to whom he will. يعني ليست حكرا على أحد حتى ولو كان إثيست. غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. الله أعلم.
Yes, these transcendent, all the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are absolute. But the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not executed haphazardly or randomly. تعالى الله عن ذلك علوا كبيرا. It is executed through rules. Gravity is a rule from Allah. It's part of the will of Allah. He designed this universe to work that way. Your job is to discover it and leverage it. Now, there are rules. As we know, nowadays, there are so many books and papers and theses that were published about the rise and fall of nations. What makes a nation succeed and prosper, and what makes a nation fail. From the early book, famous book by Paul Kennedy, The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. And then after that, so many publications, and it's amazing. These are the rules that Allah embedded in this universe. It's the job of believers, not to say that because we are believers, these rules are going to work for us because Allah is with us. No, that's totally wrong. It's your job to discover them and leverage them. And if you don't, and somebody else who is disbeliever, atheist, whatever you call it, they discover those rules and leverage them, they will succeed in this life because these rules are not biased. And that's why nowadays, one of the most successful nations in the world, Japan, Japan has no religion. And it's something very strange that also one of the best characters, and much better than Muslim characters all over the world, almost with very few exceptions. And I read one time study said that they took the Islamic characters and they applied them to different populations. And the nation that met, had the highest score was Finland. Basically, the people of Finland are the closest to the Islamic characters. So the people who are implementing Akhlaq al-Islam the most in this country, they're not Muslims. They are the people of Finland. So this is the nature of things. There is nothing Muslims should take for granted, even akhlaq, even character and manners, you should not take it for granted. Everything has to be earned. So it's not because you are Muslim, because that's the problem that happens to people before us, that we are the chosen people. I don't need to do anything. I should be winners. I should be victorious. I think should work. I am better than other. Better for what? And our contribution nowadays to the world is zero. And sometimes it's negative. So better than what? ما هو better, Quran, when you say better, immediately told you what makes you better. تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. So don't take anything for granted. It's you become, or you are expected to be the best of communities because you fulfill this mission. Because wherever you settle, you make things better for everybody. Because of that makes you, but if you stop doing this, then you lose that special status. الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف. There are people who are impactful. And people, when they settle in a place, they have their impact. They're difference makers. That's what Muslims are expecting. Now, if you do that, then you become ummah wasat and khayra ummah. But if you're not doing that, then there is nothing special about you. It's there are rules. It's like the physical universe. There are rules that govern the physical universe. There are other rules. There are rules that govern the human societies. That's why we have sociology. That's why you have psychology. That's why we have all these social sciences.
Yeah, I'd like to add, Dr. Nursi, Jazakallah khair, just as an example about when you said there are people who are impactful. Unfortunately, our Muslim brothers and sisters, Muslim communities are not very impactful in the U.S. and in other countries in Europe and other areas. And the problem with that is that when they go back to their countries, say to visit, and there are issues that need to be improved, they're not impactful there as well. So I think it's very important for us to know that even though you might live in Europe or South Africa or the US or Canada, you should encourage your kids to be impactful, because if they get used to being impactful where they live, when they go back to the original your homeland, then they become impactful there. I have just a quick example, like in my town of Silwad, Palestine, there's a hospital that was built, and basically it's basically empty. It has not been finished for more than 20 years. And had there been people who are impactful in the U.S., when they go back to Palestine or Silwad, rather than just renting cars and just driving around in the summer and spending money, they would have addressed this need and finished this hospital. But it's been sitting there for more than 20 years. And, people just come and go, they vacation, they rent cars, they spend money, as if, it's not their duty, and they don't care.
That's bad. I mean, that's not normal in Palestine in particular, because in other Muslim countries, people are used to centralized government that does everything. So they became very passive. But from what I know, in Palestine, people are usually entrepreneurs, and people are, because there is no central government to rely on. I don't know why this case. I mean, they see a hospital for so long and they don't really put their heads together and their resources and then make it happen. Yeah, especially those who are living abroad and they have the means. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the people from Silwad are different from the rest of people in Palestine. I don't know.
All right, brothers, Jazakumullah khair. So we'll continue inshallah next week with the Surah Al-Imran. As you can see, we're trying to dig out and uncover as many of the gems of Quran as possible. No matter how much you know this book, no matter how much you memorize it, for how long, every time you go back and read it, as if you read it for the first time. It's an amazing. طيب,
one last
Yes.
thing, everyone.
Sure.
Sorry, Dr. Anushi.
Sure.
We have a sister that joins us in the group every Sunday, and she's feeling sick. So if your brothers and sisters can keep her in your prayers, that would be great.
Inshallah, pray for her.
شفاء الله وعافاها.
Quick recovery. شفاء الله وعافاها.
بارك الله فيكم، شكرا جزيلا.
وإياكم إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم.